I do feel like if we can get the educators to come together and to make a stand and to portray their voice, because a lot of times I feel like they're suppressing or they deal with different things and they're not vocalizing them. And they put it on the center directors to step up and make this noise and make these decisions. But I do feel like, too, if the educators come together as a whole and say, we're not just babysitters, because there is that dynamic that educators, early childcare educators, are overlooked.
Right.
So in order to improve quality, that starts with your educators.
Friends, welcome to this episode of the Childcare Teacher Chronicles, where we discuss all things childcare as it relates to the teacher's point of view. I have here with me Aronisha Mickell with Little Steps Learning Center, and we are going to be discussing teacher pay and compensation, the owner's edition. This is going to be juicy. First of all, let me thank you for coming. I can go through all your accolades and what you do, but I want you to have the opportunity to tell the audience about yourself. So go ahead.
Thank you for inviting me. My name is Aronisha, and I am the director of Little Steps Learning Center that is ran with my mother. I came into it naturally because I just wanted to assist and help her out, and I kind of got a feel in the love for early child care. So that's where that orchestrated, and I went from teacher in the classroom to director / owner duties and everything in between.
All right. So that's what makes you so perfect to have this conversation with me. We are discussing teachers' pay and compensation, the owner's edition. I did ask your mom, Miss Lakeisha, to be here. I have known her for years. We have been partners with Early Head Start. We have been able to interact and get to know each other on the personal and professional level. However, she felt that you were the one to fluently have this conversation. I think that's impactful because, as Aronisha says, she have worked every aspect in the child care centers. So she would be someone who can speak on this owner edition coming from the teacher side, right?
Yes.
So one of the things I wanted to ask, there is always a hot topic about pay and compensation as it relates to child care teachers. And so my first question for you is market competitiveness and staff retention. How do you all work on keeping your staff and staying up to date with the current market rates and making sure that you're paying them an adequate salary or not feeling the pressure to overpay them to keep staff on retention?
So I feel like keeping our staff and the staff retention and pay, yes, that is a big part, but it's also other ways that you're willing to compensate your staff, that you're willing to motivate them, that you're willing to uplift them and let them know that we are a community and we are a village. And taking a step back, a huge part of that comes in when you realize that you cannot sustain a highly functioning or proficient center on your own. So I love to build networks and connections so I can see not so much as a competitive nature, but as we're building off of each other or we're scaffolding off of each other. So I like to connect with other center owners, directors to say, hey, what are some ways that you communicate these things with your staff, or what are some ways that you implement different things into your programs? So with that, we've had the honor of being granted different partnerships and being able to just stay in the know and then connect and have a voice in the child care field as well to say, hey, these are the things that we need, or these are the things that would benefit our retention, because we all have a common goal of improving the quality of care in New Orleans in general. Not just New Orleans, but statewide, nationwide, things in early child care, like NACI, all of those different opportunities that are presented to us that I feel like sometimes we're not biting at. But those are the people that's going to let you know, hey, there's some wage enhancement programs that's going on right now. These are different grants that you can apply for to bonus your staff, or there's grants that help with the back end of making sure that you can operate a quality child care center and facility.
So you just downloaded us with a bunch of information, right? Some very good and pertinent information. But I want to take a time to dissect this. So not only can teachers understand these different aspects, but also owners and directors, right? So one of the things you said was you all partner with certain entities, right? That allows you to be able to apply for these grants, whether it's financial, whether it's seats. How important is it to be able to secure grants to receive additional funding for either the child care center or for wages in the centers itself?
I feel like it's detrimental, especially because you can't depend on just tuition-based students, or you can't depend on these things anymore. Like maybe when you were starting up and the goal was to market and put yourself out there so that you can get these kids in and you can make this tuition to meet these goals and these budget plans. Now that's not sustainable with the economic downturn that's been going on right now. So a lot of parents and people can't afford quality childcare, which gives us the back end of the stick, because we need that, you know, to sustain our business. We need this to pay our staff, to make sure that we keep our operations going. So it is vital that you get out there and you get in the know and you apply for grants, or you get in the know and you sustain these partnerships with these agencies that's providing these fundings, or these people that are going out there and advocating with state representatives and things like that so that they can make these resources available.
Okay, so let me talk to the teachers for a little while. Although this is the owner's edition, I want to make sure we talk to the teachers. And I say this because when you say securing these grants and getting these grants and building these partnerships, that is a twofold operation, right? It's up to the center leaders, the owners, or the directors to seek out the grants, to apply for the grants, to, you know, line everything up to have a shot for the grants. But I need you to kind of talk to what's the teacher's responsibilities in helping us secure these grants? Because it doesn't solely fall on just filling out the application. When we apply for these grants, there are certain criteria that these centers have to meet, right? And a lot of that, or a huge scoring factor of that, falls on the who?
The teachers.
The teachers.
Because of the quality.
So can you talk to a little bit about how can the teachers help secure these grants and more funding to help with their compensation and wages?
I feel like the educators have a big voice too, because the educators and the teachers as a whole, that is a powerful force.
That is.
Yes, as directors, you have us who we're going to these meetings, we're going to these different things to find out this information. But I do feel like if we can get the educators to come together and to make a stand and to portray their voice, because a lot of times I feel like they're suppressing, or they deal with different things and they're not vocalizing them. And they put it on the center directors to step up and make this noise and make these decisions. But I do feel like too, if the educators come together as a whole and say, we're not just babysitters, because there is that dynamic that educators, early child care educators, are overlooked. So in order to improve quality, that starts with your educators. And that quality improvement allows for you to advocate for different funding, or for you to go in these positions and say, this is what my child care center offers. This is what we're doing. This is the curriculum that we follow. My educators are CDA certified. My educators are constantly taking professional development courses, and they're going to different levels and different heights, so they should be respected as teachers as well. So it really does take a village.
That's exactly what I wanted you to hit on. So one of the things that's very important towards securing and getting funding or getting grants for these seats is the level of education that the teachers has, those teachers' class scores. You know, you have to be reliable, you have to be class certified, and a lot of the grants, you have to have at least a child development associate credential, right? But we find now that teachers don't feel like they have to go and get that CDA certification. You know, if we force them or make them, then it's something they'll go for, but they don't really want to do it. They don't want to get their ancillary certificate. They don't want to do the class training. So what I wanted you to speak more into is, how can the teachers obtain these different things to help us get the funding we need to help them?
So I feel like a huge part in that is just being real and being upfront with your educators coming in. I know sometimes there's a demand for teachers, there's turnover that you have to deal with, and we're hiring because we want to improve that quality of care. But when I bring in a new educator, I sit them down. I give them their job description, their role description. You're on a probationary period because you have to be a fit for this environment or for this center. So you want to find people, and sometimes those educators, they're not aware or they're not privy to how important they are or how special they are. So that comes when you have that force of, I'm going to take these qualities in you and I'm going to enhance them. So sometimes you have to find educators that are fit for your environment and for your community and for your mission. So if that means bringing somebody in, and you might not have that motivation initially because you might not be aware of the severity of pouring into these young kids, because sometimes it is looked at like, we're here, we're doing a job, but you don't understand that that's going with them long term. So I feel like sometimes when we bring them in, it's our job to put a little fire under them or to motivate them and not wait until they're already in these positions and they're comfortable to start having those conversations about CDA. An initial requirement in coming into our center is that you have this 6-month period to join this course, or you have this period to determine if this is the environment, if this is the job for you.
Right.
Because it's more than just a job. We are nurturing, we're building a next generation. So I just think that it's very important to just be upfront and be real about what this job entails and what we're looking for. And also just letting them know how far you can go in this field and different roles or different descriptions that we're looking to promote people to, because sometimes people need to know that they're not stagnant in their field. You are not just an educator. There's so much that we are ready to push off because we handle a lot as directors. So I just feel like that's a big part in it.
That is. And so one of the things that we talk about, a lot of times when teachers come in, they look for the dollar sign, and then they want to know how much more that dollar sign is going to be and what time frame, but they don't really factor in all those other compensations we offer them. Specifically for my organization, we do 401k, we do medical, we do dental, we do vision, we do reduced child care assistance. There are plenty of things that child care centers do that gives a compensation that's not a dollar amount, right? So I wanted to ask, what are some of the things that Little Step do to kind of help offset that dollar amount, but it's also a benefit or a compensation to you all staff?
Right. So it kind of goes back into what you said. We offer 401k, we offer insurance, dental, which offsets a lot of your personal finances. So it kind of reflects into what your salary is or what you're making, because we're able to accommodate you in these ways where you don't have to pay for doctor visits in entirety, or you don't have to go and find a center to put your child in, because we offer tuition reimbursement as well in different programs like that. So I don't want to, be repetitive, but it kind of falls under the same bracket of the things that you listed, as well as doing periodic bonuses when that funding is made available to us, or when we have the extra wiggle room because this just took care of this for us. So now we can pour more into our staff. We also do yearly trips, because some of our staff have never had the opportunity to be outside of New Orleans, Louisiana.
Right.
So every year we offer things like that. Like last year we did a cruise. The year before we went to New York with our staff.
I remember.
But that all, comes in with budget planning and utilizing those resources that's made available to offset some of our business expenses, so that we can make a plan in the budget to pour into our staff and give them different opportunities, so that it's just not centered around a dollar amount or a salary.
So let me ask you this. I'm going to give you an example that we actually dealt with, and I want to know what's your conversation around that to kind of help the teachers look at the big picture, right? So we also qualify for one of the wage enhancement grants where, the teachers were able to get an additional $200, $208 a month in their paychecks, right? And so one of my teachers, she came in and she bought a 2-week notice that she was leaving because the center down the street was going to pay her like $15 or something like that. I believe at the time she was making 13 something. And so we actually sat down and had that conversation. We was like, well, you are due for your annual at this time frame, but have you factored in this bonus that you're getting every month, this 48-month long bonus, this 2-year long bonus, right? Have you figured that in? And so when we sat down and did the math with her, she was actually making a little bit more than that $15 an hour when we factor in that $208 a month, right? And she was like, oh, no, I didn't consider that. Well, she stayed on, but then she came back, maybe in another few weeks, it was like, nah, when she got her check, she can't see it in her check because she's looking for that whole dollar amount, right? But she's not considering this bonus amount. So some of the teachers, you know, that dollar amount is so important where no matter whatever additional we do, they don't see a value in it. Same with us. We do our retreats every year. I'm doing the big conference, the Childcare Teacher Reset Retreat this year. All of that is an expense in pouring into them and investing in them. And it's also giving, like you said, an opportunity to get outside the building, to get outside of New Orleans, to be able to do something different, right? Some of them don't see that as a benefit, you know, or a compensation. So what do you have? How was that conversation with those teachers when you're able to line up all these things that your center is doing specifically to show that you value them, you care for them, you want to pour into them, but they don't see it because it doesn't equate to a dollar amount?
Right. So for me, I completely relate with your frustration because it is a frustration.
It is.
Because when you have to manage 13 or, you know, and sometimes I'm saying 13 because that's our staff count, but sometimes in these environments there's, you know, bigger staff like you know, you're very successful, you have multiple centers.
Thank you.
So it's kind of frustrating when you're pulled in all different directions because you can't please to everybody. Because if you were to increase everybody's salary, your business to an extent that they would want it to be increased, it probably wouldn't be sufficient for your businesses, or your businesses and your operations wouldn't be maintained because you're trying to please to everybody. So I feel like in that instance, because I'm familiar with the, you know, the wage enhancement too, and we get the same feedback sometimes, like, oh, well, I can go do this and I can go do that. But I'm here to say the grass is not always greener on the other side. And the dollar amount isn't always the make or break factor because there is room for growth, like, you know, I touched base on before. And like you said, you're due for your annual, or you have these things that you're not incorporating. So in that instance, we began to, on some of our professional development days, bring in financial advisors or people that can connect with them on a different level, or that can deep dive into their finances and money management and different things of that nature. Because just because you're going somewhere and you're making that dollar or two difference, that does not mean that that's going to change the dynamic of your finances or your life, because that starts with you. And sometimes I don't feel like people necessarily realize that, not just in early child care, but just in general. Because a lot of people are hopping from this to this, but you're never satisfied, you're never happy, because that begins with you. So sometimes we have to give them those type of tools as well, which is outside of our branch or outside of our field, because we're focusing on child care. But now we need to address mental health issues. We need to address their financial well-being in different states like that. And sometimes even having those opportunities made available and showing them that we're pouring into you in deeper ways than this, because it's not just about the dollar. I know sometimes, like you said, it's just you're hounded on about this dollar amount, or now everybody wants to go and compare rates and compare this and compare that, but are they offering you the same type of compensations or the same type of things that we're offering? The benefits as well. So I feel like sometimes we try to take on the world and we try to take on the lot, and we grow to love these people because they are family to us. But sometimes it has to come with the hard truth of, too, you have to let people flourish and you have to let people learn and grow on their own, because we can push, we can offer all these different things, but if you're not utilizing them and if you're not appreciating them as well, which I don't want to sound harsh, but that's just the actual reality of it sometimes. And as directors, we just have to take that hit and we have to keep it pushing, because like you said, you offered, you know, you broke it down to her, but you come back 2 weeks later like, you know, well, this might be the better opportunity for me still because I see this dollar amount. Sometimes you can't, even as much as we want to, because our kids are familiar with them, we are familiar with them, we've poured into them. Sometimes you just have to be prepared for those transitions, I feel.
So that brings me to another topic, and this is something I have discussed in detail with your mother on before, the amount that we pour into staff, right? And so something you said was very important. You know, sometimes you just can't please them, right? And as business owners, and not only in the childcare field, but in general, business owner, when we can't see someone to see the light, or when we can't get to retain someone, sometimes we feel as that's a failure on our part, right? But in essence, you can only bring the horse to the water, right? You can't make them what? Drink. All right. So I have teachers who have not signed up for certain grants because they didn't want their food stamps to change, right? They have not signed up for certain wage increases because they didn't want it to affect their housing, right? And so what we had to learn to do is present them with all the facts, but let them make a decision, right? And so in having that conversation with your mom on before, we talked about it was something she did for her staff. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was paid for everyone's credit to be repaired or something like that. Your mother has a very giving heart, hands down.
Too giving.
So I tell her all the time, stop it.
This for you, stop it.
Stop it.
Look right in the camera.
But she has to do what she feels is right in her heart, right? And sometimes that leads us with being disappointed or feeling like we've been taken advantage of.
Right.
And there's some other things that she has done, as have I. I've bought a staff member a car before, all because I wanted to be a support to retaining her, but also to her family, so she wouldn't have to the stress of getting back and forth to work. I seen it was playing on her mental health, and so this was something I decided to do. The staff not with me no more, but I didn't do it with strings, right? I knew that was a chance, but this is one of the reasons why it's hard for some business owners to step out and go above and beyond, right? Because we feel in the end, sometimes we get burned or kicked in the ass, for lack of better words. So how do we make sure that what's the parameters or the boundaries that you feel need to be in place where we are doing enough, but not overdoing it to a point to where we're now causing ourselves to, lose staff or it to be a liability? Right. How do you work with setting those boundaries when you're doing your wage enhancements and compensations?
So I'm big on boundaries. I feel like you said, my mom, you can bend boundaries with her because her heart is so giving. Yeah. But I feel like when you present yourself a certain way initially and you make them understand that it's not that I don't love you or I don't care about you, but I'm not going to cripple you.
Right.
Because I feel like there's a thin line between crippling and helping.
Right.
Like, my mom did the same thing, bought somebody a vehicle that worked at the center. They're no longer with us. Somebody even quit because she said she wanted the increase, but you didn't want to lose your food stamps.
Right.
And that's beyond us. That's deeper than us because that comes with...
Well, that's the popish mindset.
Yes.
That's one thing that we have to work hard at getting especially... all people in this industry, but especially our black and brown people, I'm going to say it. We have to work hard at getting them out the poverty mindset because we were taught to, never have credit, keep, when you get your government assistance, you own, now you own, you got something, but it's just a way of keeping them confined and constrained, right? So we have to, as you said, those conversations outside of just our regular duties and for the early education, we have to be able to impart these different wisdoms in them. So that's a mouthful in what you're saying.
And breaking down those barriers. But I've always felt like too, there's always an end goal, but you don't necessarily have to always communicate that end goal. Like, for instance, with the car, I want to help you and you don't have a vehicle. So I'm going to implement things that's going to make you strive for different things or work for different things, but you don't know the end goal is I'm going to provide you with this car.
Right.
Because then you feel like you've worked for this or you've obtained this because you took these little steps to better yourself. Like I might say, even with the credit planning, like I'm going to assist you in this way or I'm going to do these things and I need you to show me this. Or next month I need you to show me where you had a 15-point increase or where you did this or you did that. And they don't know that the end goal is I'm going to reward you with this vehicle. But long term, it wouldn't just be something that's given to you. Because I feel like that's where we fall into that category of being taken advantage of. Because everybody in that center looks at my mom like their mom. You are not their mom. You are their boss. Like it is not your duty or your job to hold their hand. It's your duty to put the water, lead them to the water, and like you said, if you choose to drink, that is your responsibility. And if
you're gonna die of thirst, then you're gonna die of thirst.
But that nurturing mom aspect is like, oh no, I'm gonna pick the water up and I'm gonna put it to your mouth before I let you go. Yeah, and just
So again, it's a lot of conversation that we need to continue to impart in our childcare teachers and in this industry as a whole. We're going to get ready to wrap up, but I wanted to hit on a very important topic, and that's that budget constraints and that financial management piece as it relates to the owners of the center, right? I tell people all the time, with childcare, we can only make what we can make. We have to be creative to make more money. If we have 100 children, we can only make what our what our cap is for those 100 children. We can't squeeze not another dime out of that funds, right? So we have to be creative when we're looking to bring in other streams of revenue and other sources into our businesses, right? But I wanted to talk about the impact of the funding and the revenue that the teachers don't see, right? As I say, that restraint that we have. We can't. Right. We can only cut this pie so many ways. So how is your conversation with getting your teachers to realize, in order for me to be able to pay you more, you either need to show that you can help us produce more. Right. You know, how do the teachers play a part in making sure that you all can do a higher or better compensation for them?
I feel like we started to kind of orchestrate plans where we were giving them different role descriptions or kind of showing them, because it gives insight to, I don't know why sometimes teachers feel like the directors have it so easy and, you know, we're doing this and they're here and they're doing that. And also sometimes we have to make it clear to them that we take hits sometimes too as owners or directors, because at the end of the day, the business is what's most important. Right. Sometimes you might not receive pay as a director, or sometimes you have to cut into different things to make things happen for you. So sometimes I bring them into our world. I don't keep them in the classroom. Like if I have some downtime or if I'm loaded with 20 different things, I might pull in, you know, one of my teachers and say, I need you to do this billing, or I need you to handle this, just to kind of not, because you don't want to put them too far into, you know, into your business, because sometimes things get a little personal. You have to create that boundary, but just exposing them to what you can expose them to show them that, hey, this is not what you think. This is not what you feel necessarily all the time. Like, you have to give them that insight, and you also have to give them those roles and those responsibilities to where they feel like they're a part of something, they're a part of the team, and then they'll bring, like you said, where are you going to bring your creativity, or where are you going to bring ideas that's going to help stimulate or grow the business.
Right. So one of the things I learned I had to start doing when I would have my management meeting was actually giving them what that budget is, letting them know what we took in and letting them know what we took out. Right. And that allowed my management team to have a different perspective on the finances. And that means when it's time to send people home, because we need to make sure that we being strict on these hours, making sure that we are charging these late fees to the children when we're supposed to. So having that dialogue and that conversation does allow them to see the bigger picture, right? Yes. And let me say this as I wrap up. I want to thank you for coming, because we could really sit and go deep down in this conversation, because it's a lot that the teachers don't understand. And rightfully so, unless they're in a position to work in that administrative lane or unless they work in that management, they won't see all of the outs. Now, what I do say all the time is teachers sit down and count your in. They know how many children in there. They know how much tuition that comes in there. So teachers sit down and count your money. So when that conversation comes up as owners and directors, we need to be able to have that fluent conversation. So I want to leave that with anyone who's watching this, whether you're in the teacher capacity, whether you're in the owner or the director capacity, have that fluent conversations about revenue that's coming in. Not saying you need to tell them everything, but sometimes you may need to, in your staff meeting, have that bar graph and let them see this what we made in, but this went out in food, this went out in salaries, this went out all them supplies y'all order, because y'all keep losing crayons and pencils and scissors and staplers. We had to pay for this again. Have that conversation so they know it's not that we're sitting on money and pocketing it. Aronisha Mickell, I want to thank you for coming and being a representation of Little Steps Learning Center as we discuss teacher pay and retention. We want to thank you for tuning into this episode of the Childcare Teachers Chronicles, where we discuss all things childcare as it relates to the teacher's point of view. I want you to make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you next time.